Did somebody say, we have a MLB slate tonight? Somebody cue that music. It's that time again, where full-time DFS pros give you what you need to succeed. It doesn't matter if you're shooting for a GPP takedown or trying to build your bankroll by hitting in cash. We've got you covered. No BS, just DFS. Welcome to On the RotoRadar with your hosts, Brittingham T and Two Minds Bluff.
Welcome to your Friday episode of On the RotoRadar, where we hope to give you the winning plays to take down some of these big Friday contests. I'm your co-host, Two Minds Bluff.
And Brittingham T here with you. I will be covering the cash game aspect of today's 14-game slate. Bluff will be covering the GPP aspect for you. We have a monster slate with a very, very fun pitching prospects and some great hitting spots. We don't have time to mess around. Let's get right to it. Our very first game, we have the Boston Red Sox and Rick Porcello going to Baltimore to take on the Orioles and Alec Asher. The Red Sox are minus 127 favorites. The run total is the second highest of the slate at 9.5. Who are you looking at in this game, Bluff?
Well, I want none of the pitching. Rick Porcello, last year's Cy Young winner, continues to just get hit very, very hard. He always pitches deep in the games. No matter how he's performing, he usually gets 110 pitches regardless. But he's been getting very hard. He was one of the leaders on the slate in hard contact allowed, and he's one of the worst on the slate in soft contact allowed. So there's really no reason for me to pitch him, even at his discounted price, versus a Orioles team that can strike out. But this Orioles team is also better versus right-hand pitching, and I think they're going to hit Rick pretty hard today. I do have interest in some of the Orioles hitters for GPPs. Adam Jones has been hitting the ball hard. We saw him hit a homer yesterday. Manny Machado's been struggling, but I still have no problem going with Manny, especially he's at 3,900 still on DraftKings. I think that makes a great play if you can save some money, and no one's playing Manny Machado. People don't usually like to pick on Rick Porcello either, so I think he's going to be low-owned at a cheap price. And then you have Trumbo and Chris Davis all are up towards the top of my list of players I'm interested in here. As far as the
let me throw some throw some numbers at you against Rick Porcello. Some of the Orioles BVP. Adam Jones is 11 for 48 with 3 home runs. Mark Trumbo is 9 for 29 with 3 home runs. Chris Davis is 5 for 27 with 1 home run. And Manny Machado is 9 for 30 with 1 home run. So you can see that they've seen him a pretty decent amount of times here. 25 or more at-bats is usually a decent enough sample size. And each of those guys has at least a home run. I wouldn't, in cash games, Rick Porcello will not be even mentioned. He won't be a thing. But I could definitely see in GPP where you're very excited to play some of these Orioles bats just because Rick Porcello does have that name around the industry that he's a decent pitcher.
Yeah, and I don't normally spend a lot of time on DVP, but I pulled up the average exit velocities versus Porcello. Manny Machado has an average exit velocity of 95 miles an hour versus Porcello. Adam Jones, 93 miles an hour. Mark Trumbo, 105 mile an hour average exit velocity. And Chris Davis, 92 miles an hour. So they're seeing him well and they're hitting him hard. And right now he's struggling to not be hit hard. So this seems like a great spot. I think the Orioles are definitely in consideration for me for one of my favorite GPP stacks of the day.
What about these Red Sox hitters? For cash games, people have been getting very frustrated with the Red Sox this week. They've been in great spots all week long, and they've failed to deliver in the spots you expect them to deliver. They keep hitting the run total that Vegas has projected for them, which has been 4 or 5 most of the week, but it's been guys in the back of the order or the middle of the order. It's just not been the guys you've been playing if you've been playing cash games. And today it's no different. They're, again, one of the top stacks of the day. They come in with the 3rd highest projected team total at 4.91 runs. They're facing off against Alec Asher, who is just a middling pitcher who came out of the bullpen, and they're working him out as a starter now. And this season, he's allowing a 362 WOBA with 4 home runs and 10 earned runs in only 16.1 innings to right-handed bats. He's only striking out 16.7%. That's a 2.20 home run per 9 to right-handed bats. So guys like Mookie Betts, again, is going to be one of the top plays on the slate. I don't think he's going to be very popular in cash today because he's burned a few people this week, and his price is really high for the pitching options we have on today's slate. You'll need to save somewhere, and Betts is a great play again, but I don't think people are going to go to him today. And I don't see people playing many Red Sox, even though Vegas is telling us they should be good cash game plays. What do you think about the Red Sox?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough not to love him. I mean, I have no respect for Asher. He has not given up as much hard contact as I would assume, but he's still, this Red Sox team, this lineup is built to just destroy pitchers like this. I mean, they struggled yesterday. At least the top of the order struggled again. Mookie Betts got robbed of a homer in his first at bat and then did nothing after that. And like Mookie and Jackie Bradley are both and Xander, both 5K or above on DraftKings. So I can't, like you said, I can't imagine much ownership on them just because they're kind of priced out of the play. But I mean, I like pretty much everyone in this lineup. I like Moreland. He should be batting 5th. Jackie Bradley batting 6th. I have no problem with Benettini batting 2 or 3 or wherever they end up putting him. I mean, everyone in this Red Sox lineup, but almost everyone in this Orioles lineup's in play. It's kind of one of those games where I'd love to game stack it, but the pricing is so high on the Red Sox makes it pretty tough if you want to fit in some top-end pitching.
Anything else you want to cover on that game?
I think that should do it.
Our next matchup, we have the San Francisco Giants and Ty Bloch taking on the Philadelphia Phillies and Jared Eichhoff. The game is in Philly. Philly is a minus 116 favorite. The run total is 8.5. What are you seeing in this matchup?
No interest in the pitching. The Giants are that pesky team, and they also throw out a lot of left-hand bats. You don't even want to consider Eichhoff if he has to face a bunch of lefties. Block, no interest in him. I do have some interest in the hitting. Like I said, I like to target Eichhoff with lefties. So Brandon Belt getting a huge park upgrade in Philly is just a great spot. He's only 4K on DraftKings. You can play him at first or outfield. One of my favorite plays of the day. Brandon Crawford in a great spot as well, and he's only 3.1K on DraftKings. Way too cheap, especially versus a guy who struggles with power to giving up power to left-hand bats. For the Phillies, they're struggling. Ty Bloch, his results have been decent, but from what I've looked at, and I even dug into him right before this podcast again, even in his last game, I still see nothing there. His xFIP almost every game is still around 5, and he's going to get crushed here eventually at some point. He just can't strike anyone out. So you take away one of the biggest disadvantages Philly's lineup has when you can't strike him out. So I do like Tommy Joseph, Aaron Althea should be batting 3 and 4. Caesar's not a terrible play, but you lose a lot of the stolen base upside with Block, decent at holding on runners, and then you have Posey behind the plate. Cameron Rupp's also potentially, even though he's been struggling. And Michael Saunders, if you want to go down and find a cheap outfielder, actually hits lefties better, and so I have no problem with him. How about you?
In cash games, there's Brandon Crawford at shortstop is going to show up in a lot of your head-to-head matchups, and I suspect his ownership will be pretty high in 50-50s and double-ups. He's only 2,800 on DraftKings, and he's only 3,100 on DraftKings, and he's only 2,800 on FanDuel. That's a price point that in a lot of builds today at a shortstop position where none of the guys at the very top tier 1 price points are in great spots. So with Brandon Crawford, he's fitting just a lot of builds no matter who you choose as your SP1 and SP2. He's a guy that's always had power. He'll be hitting 5th. He'll have a platoon advantage. And this is a major upgrade in park with the Giants being in Philly. So Brandon Crawford is going to be very popular today in cash games. Brandon Belt at first base, and he's also got the outfield eligibility on DraftKings, might also show up in a few places just because of the park shift and his ability with the splits against Eichhoff. But my only interest really is going to be because there's better plays at first base, in my opinion, just from the builds I've made. But Brandon Crawford is going to be a thing today. You can guarantee it in cash games.
Yeah, I think he's probably...
Anything else you want to touch on?
for price-adjusted rankings, he's probably the number one shortstop for me. I mean, it's tough to avoid a guy batting fifth with a great split matchup and a great hitter's park. In that situation, at a tough shortstop position. So, I agree with you there.
Moving on, our next game, we have the New York Yankees and Michael Pineda at the Toronto Blue Jays taking on Francisco Liriano. The Yankees are minus 118 favorites. The run total is 9. We saw what this Yankees offense can do. Today they get a lefty. Liriano has been a bit shaky. How are you approaching this game?
Yeah, I have no interest in the pitching here. Pineda continues to pitch well. He's even priced down a little bit today, but I just hate the matchup for him. He struggles, serving up fastballs down the middle from time to time, and basically everyone in this Orioles lineup can crush those pitches. So I have no interest in Pineda. And then Liriano, I'm assuming will be on a restricted pitch count. Plus, I believe Russell Martin is probably still hurt, and when Russell Martin does not catch Liriano, he struggles immensely. If you look at his stats, I mean, it's such a huge splits with Russell Martin catching. So basically never play Liriano unless Russell Martin is catching him. There's also a very good hitters umpire in this game, so that makes me even less interested in the pitching. I do have some interest in the hitting. It's your usual suspects. I'm really not certain how popular these guys will be right now. But Gary Sanchez hit 2 homers yesterday, so he's almost always your top catcher on any slate. Gets a decent matchup versus Liriano. You have Holiday continues to hit the ball well. Aaron Judge continues to hit the ball well. Aaron Hicks versus a lefty is always of interest. It'll be interesting to see where he bats today. He had a monster game yesterday with, I think, 4 hits and 6 RBIs. And then on the Blue Jays side, I want to find guys that can hit homers, and I always just default to going to Justin Smoke when I want that situation. But there's also Kendrys at Stam at first, and your usual suspects that of Donaldson, Batista, and then if you don't want to play Crawford, could be some interest in Troy Tulowitzki, but I much prefer Crawford. How about you?
Initially, I had some interest in Michael Pineda just because he's been playing so well this season. He is the favorite. He's got a 27% strikeout rate. He's got a 3.31 Sierra. But there's just better spots for the price point today, especially in cash games. You can go lower or you can go higher and get a much safer return. As far as the bats, the Yankees are going to be extremely popular. After the 4-game slate yesterday where they just went off and everybody saw, they're already a team that people like to play and like to stack. And today they get a lefty in the Rogers Center. They have the 5th highest projected team total at 4.61 runs. You're going to see Gary Sanchez at the catcher spot. He's still underpriced for his ability on FanDuel. He's only $3,400. That's the same tier as a mid-priced outfielder. And he's always the best catching option if he's in the lineup. You're going to see a lot of Starlin Castro if he's hitting cleanup, just because of second base, the position scarcity, to be the cleanup hitter on a high-powered offense. And the outfielders are interesting. I was taken back a bit by the amount of ownership on Aaron Judge yesterday. He was around 40% owned in cash games.
I wouldn't expect that.
He got bumped up to the 3-hole, so maybe that had something to do with it. But Aaron Judge, I was surprised. A lot of people faded Mookie Betts and played Aaron Judge, and it ended up being the right play because Betts went for the 0, and Judge ended up with, he had a hit, RBI, and he took a walk and scored a run. So if Judge is hitting in the 3-hole today against a lefty, I could see him being popular again just because he's got monster home run upside, and people love to play the Yankees, specifically Aaron Judge. What do you think about him specifically?
I mean, I don't think I'm going to be going there just because Liriano pitches. He's looked decent. He looked decent in his rehab starts. And I just don't want at 5.2K on DraftKings especially. I mean, he's priced too high for a spot that I think I can find better outfielders at that price point. But I would not complain about anyone playing him. I mean, he's the perfect DFS play because he can crush 2 or 3 homers 450 feet apiece, and he gives you the immense upside of any outfielder that you could ever want. It is nice that with the hitter's umpire, that really, downgrades Liriano, and that could force him to not work the edges as much as he likes to, and maybe hang a few pitches, and that.
If you get bad Liriano with good Yankees offense,
yeah, it could be a long day. And so that's kind of what I was saying is, I don't mind anyone in this Yankees team. I don't really know if I'm going to go there, but they all do make pretty good plays. I will say one thing about Pineda. I don't like the matchup for him, but it still is a matchup that offers a lot of strikeout upside. And if he's on, he could throw, a huge game here at a 8.6 cheap price point on DraftKings. So I guess I maybe overstated. I wouldn't write him off. He definitely should be in consideration, but he's not really making the list for me at the moment.
Yeah, he's not going to be popular in cash games because we're going to talk about Michael Fulmer here in a bit, who has just a much safer matchup at a cheaper price point. He's just going to be the cash game pivot. But one last guy I want to touch on before we move on from this game, Aaron Hicks, if he's hitting seconds, which he has been against lefties. Hicks has been a monster anytime he's in the lineup. He very rarely gets you a 0 because he's always in a great just hitting spot in this high-powered offense. He's only 3,300 on FanDuel, and on DraftKings, he's coming in at 4,000, which is a little bit more pricey, but he's a great play if he gets in that 2-hole.
Yeah, we saw what he did. Was the 7 or 8 hole yesterday. He had that 4 for 4, I think, with 6 RBIs. Just crazy day yesterday. Yeah.
Moving on, we will be talking about the guy I just referenced here. We have the Chicago White Sox and Derek Holland, who are in Detroit to take on the Tigers and the aforementioned Michael Fulmer. The Tigers are minus 190 favorites. This is the second largest favorite of the day. The run total is 8.5. How are you approaching the White Sox at the Tigers?
Yeah, I mean, you obviously have to have a lot of interest in Fulmer. It's a thing to target the White Sox with right-hand pitching. I do have some worries about him. He doesn't have great strikeout stuff, and especially versus right-handers. I have him at 14.6 K percentage versus right-handers this year, and he has shown reverse splits all year. He's got about a 1-run xFIP split versus righties. He's got about 4.4 versus righties and a 3.4 versus lefties. And so if you're going to get this White Sox lineup that's going to be almost completely right-handed, it's tough to just assume that the right versus righty matchups are good for Fulmer. I think he's actually maybe a much worse matchup than people were going to assume. Derek Holland, obviously no interest, and he's going to get the complete right-hand lineup of the Tigers, and they should hit him a lot, so I have a big interest in the Tigers hitters again, even though they've kind of been struggling lately, but you have to love Miguel Cabrera. He's only 4,200 on DraftKings. JD Martinez has been hitting the ball pretty much harder than anyone in baseball, and that's kind of who I would go instead of Aaron Judge. You got JD Martinez batting 5th. He does hit righties a little better, but I wouldn't put much worth into that. Derek Holland basically throws batting practice when I've watched him pitch, so I expect JD Martinez to hit one a long way today. What are you thinking?
Well, I want to spend a minute on Michael Fulmer here. He's not in play on FanDuel at 9,600, but on DraftKings, he makes for a very, very strong cash game play. He's only 8,000. He's faced the White Sox. This will be the 3rd time he's faced off against the White Sox, and he actually went against them his last start. In his first start back on April 29th, he went 6 innings. He gave up 4 hits. He only had 3 strikeouts. He gave up 3 earned runs. This most recent time, on May 27th, he went 8 innings. He gave up 9 hits, had 4 strikeouts, and gave up 3 earned runs. So nothing amazing from Michael Fulmer as far as his matchups previously with the White Sox. But here's why he's a very good cash play. He's the second biggest favorite of the slate. He's at home. The White Sox are a team you target with right-handed pitching. He has 10 games started and 10 quality starts, which means he hasn't given up more than 3 runs in any of his starts through 6 innings. For a cash game perspective at 8K on DraftKings for your SP2, it's about as safe as it gets. Vegas. I
I don't think
Vegas.
I don't think it's safe. I think the reverse splits are real. I think when I look at his pitch mix, it makes sense that righties hit him better. And this is a team that is all right-handed, and they're all capable hitters. And I agree with his other starts. Like I would expect 6 innings, 10 hits and walks, and 3 or 4 earned runs with only 4 or 5 strikeouts. And he might get the win because the Tigers might score 10 runs, but it just doesn't. There's nothing about it that excites me, I guess.
On DraftKings at 8K though in cash games, you're going to run into a lot of Fulmer. I mean, people are just going to see right-handed pitcher, White Sox, huge favorite, 8K.
Yeah, I mean,
he allows you to pay up for bats and one of the big 2 pitchers.
Yeah, I mean, I agree he might be popular, but I don't think he should be. Is what all I'm saying. I think there's a lot more risk there than what appears at the surface level.
As far as the Tigers bats, you mentioned it. All the right-handed bats are in play for me. Miggy Cabrera, of course, at first base is always in play. He's cheaper on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I don't think you're going to be able to pay up for him in cash games. The same with JD Martinez in the outfield. I don't think you're going to be able to afford him in cash games, but he makes a fine play. Justin Upton, I think, is still going to be out for this game. I don't expect him to make the lineup. But the 2 guys you will come across in cash games from the Tigers are Andrew Romine, if he's hitting leadoff. Anytime that you get a cheap guy that has multi-position eligibility on DraftKings, he's second base and outfield on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's outfield only. But if you get a leadoff hitter from the team that's projected to score the 4th highest runs, the Tigers have a 4.77 projection, he's going to be a safe play in cash, so people will play him. He'll be popular. The other play that you're going to run into in cash, and I'm pretty high on today, is the catcher John Hicks. He's been hitting 7th for the Tigers with James McCann out against lefties. Opposing pitcher Derek Holland is allowing a 328 WOBA with 8 home runs. His hard hit rate to right-handed bats is 41%. His fly ball rate is 44%. I like Hicks in this spot, who has a 404 WOBA on the season and 357 ISO against left-handed pitching. Has Hicks shown up on any of your run-throughs?
Yeah, I would say by far Hicks is the best value catcher, and he's probably up there. Like you said, he's going to be batting probably 7th. He's super cheap on DraftKings, 2.7K, and I like any righty versus Holland. Just if you watch him pitch, it's very easy. He literally throws BP for most of his starts. Every now and again he gets lucky and somehow survives, but I like Hicks a lot.
Hicks has been good when he's been given the opportunity to make the lineup. He's only 2.2K on FanDuel and 2.7 on DraftKings. He's going to be in a lot of cash game lineups because of the splits, the opportunity. So for me, he's right up there point per dollar with any catcher on the slate. Anything else from this game?
I think that should do it.
Our next game is the Arizona Diamondbacks and Patrick Corbin taking on the Miami Marlins in Miami and Jose Urena. The Miami Marlins are minus 112 favorites. It is a run total of 9. Tell me about your interest in this matchup.
No interest in the pitching. I do still like Corbin. He's been struggling lately, but just no reason to pick on the Marlins, especially versus a lefty. They're one of the best offenses in baseball versus left-hand pitching. As far as hitting, I don't have a ton of interest in these Marlins hitters just because I do respect Corbin. I don't like grabbing hitters in this ballpark, and there's better spots. I mean, Stanton and Ozuna and JT all in fine spots, but they just won't make it for me. There is some interest for the Diamondbacks hitters. Urena has limited damage for the most part in most of his starts so far this year, but everything I look at shows that he's the pitcher we kind of thought he was. He has a 6.17 xFIP versus left-hand hitters this year, so I mean Jake Lamb really stands out for me. David Peralta, I'm nervous about him. I mean he's just not been hitting very well the last month, but it is a good spot for him, and also you can never go wrong with Goldschmidt hitting that 5-0, but he's priced up in a pitcher's park and kind of a spot where I'd rather go somewhere else at first. How about you?
No interest in pitching, but in cash games, I have lots of interest in some of these hitters. I have the as the number 2 and number 3 home run upside plays of the day come from this game, and I don't know how you can't love Giancarlo Stanton in this matchup. I get it's the park. Some people are afraid to play people in Marlins Park, but Stanton's been hitting second. Anytime he's versus a lefty, he's got a 439 WOBA and a 385 ISO against left-handed pitching. Corbin is allowing a 38% hard hit rate, and he's only striking out 16% of right-handed batters. To me, it's just a lock and load Stanton spot. He's just set up for home run upside in this matchup. I just love Giancarlo Stanton. If I can afford him in cash games, he's somebody I'm willing to pay up for.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I should have maybe got more, but yeah, Corbin is not striking out right-hand bats, and if you have a lefty that can't strike out right-hand bats, it's always a great spot for Stanton. So
I love that. Since he's been hitting the second hole or the 2 hole. I love what he's been doing. I think he had up until he's got a hit in 4 straight games. He's got a home run in 2 of his last 4. This is a spot where I'm targeting Stanton. And other bats, Marcell Ozuna.
Stanton has a 99 mile an hour average exit velocity and 11 at bats versus Corbin, so he's seeing them well and hitting them hard.
Yeah, I love Stanton today. I mentioned Marcell Ozuna, who's been hitting cleanup. Anytime Ozuna faces a lefty, I'm always interested as well. He's got 341 WOBA and a 204 ISO against left-handed pitching. I will do my best to get Stanton in my cash game lineups. I'm that certain of a good play he is today. Just for safety, I think he does some damage. As far as the Diamondbacks are a good spot, but the Arizona offense on the road has been lacking, to say the least. They got shut down by Jeff Locke yesterday. They ended up winning the game 3-2 or 3-1, but it wasn't because of Locke. Locke went, I believe it was 6 shutout innings, 1-run inning. But there's one guy that's popping up today in cash games. You're not going to be able to afford Paul Goldschmidt. You're not going to be able to play Jake Lamb. You're not going to want to play David Peralta just because his price isn't matching his production lately. But Chris Herman he's been hitting 6th or 7th whenever they face a righty. And today he is your 2K player on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he's 3,300, and I don't think he's playable on DraftKings. But on FanDuel, he's 2K. He's the dead minimum, facing Urena, who's allowed a 358 WOBA to left-handed bats. He's only striking out 9% of left-handed bats. So you're going to have a choice on FanDuel. You can pay up for a Sanchez, you can go with John Hicks in a good spot, or it's going to be Chris Herman in cash games. Those are pretty much the 3 guys you're going to run into, and I think it's really that small of a pool for catcher.
Yeah, another thing, if Herman is catching today, that's an upgrade to the Marlins hitting just because he calls a terrible game. He's a terrible defensive catcher and just makes it tougher on the pitcher, and there's going to be more base runners, more damage. So it's another upgrade for the Miami hitters.
Anything else you want to touch on from these 2 teams?
That should do it.
Moving on, we have the Pittsburgh Pirates and Garrett Cole, who are going to be at the New York Mets, taking on Matt Harvey. Matt Harvey is a -110 favorite. The run total is 8. These are 2 pitchers with big names in the industry. How are you approaching this?
I have no interest in any of the pitching, and really no interest in any of the hitting. It's pretty much a pass game for me. How about you?
The same. It's a weird spot. Garrett Cole, he's a guy that is just kind of there. He's not in play today. His price point is just a weird spot. He's just not in play. And the last time he faced the Mets, he got lit up. He was at Pittsburgh in the pitcher's park, and he gave up 10 hits. He only had 3 strikeouts, and he gave up 4 earned runs. That was the day Neil Walker lit him up.
Yeah, he's he's a little worse for his lefties, and he strikes them out at a much lower rate. So it's a tough matchup for Garrett Cole.
And people are going to point to that Neil Walker how he had that explosion against the Pirates, and he's at a position again today at second base where I could see some people playing Neil Walker in cash games. Outside of that, there's no Pirates I'm interested in. There's no really, you can't afford Jay Bruce, you can't afford Michael Conforto today. There's better plays than Lucas Duda at first base, but you will see some Neil Walker in cash games, even though it's not anything. I mean, on paper, the matchup, nothing really stands out.
Yeah, I have no hitters. One thing, Jay Bruce is priced super low on DraftKings, only 4.1K.
Oh, they dropped him finally?
Yeah, first base and outfield. But yeah, he just hasn't been hitting the ball.
I didn't even look at him. I assumed he was still at 4.8 price.
Yeah, he hasn't been hitting the ball as hard lately, and I respect Cole enough to really never target against him, but I
actually do have a note. I have a note about Jay Bruce here. He's actually 6 for 20 against Cole with 1 home run, if that means anything to you. I mean, it's a decent size.
Yeah, I don't put a ton of weight. And yeah, he's got a 95 mile-an-hour average exit velocity versus him, so that's pretty dang good. So there's some interest there, especially at the reduced price. Still, I don't love the stadium. It doesn't look like great hitting weather today at all. It's not very humid. Temperatures in the 70s. So I think there's better spots, but 4,100 does definitely make him. If he was 5K, I'd have no interest. 4,100 definitely does put him into somewhat interest.
Well, here's the hitting spot. This next game, you're going to have, in cash games, you're going to run into all the bats from this game. We have the Atlanta Braves and Mike Foltynewicz.
I just call him Faulty.
Tough time pronouncing
I think it is
Mike
Foltynewicz. I think that's how you do it, but I just call him Faulty.
So the Braves and Folty going to the Cincinnati Reds to take on Bronson Arroyo. And this I found very interesting. Vegas has the Reds as minus 109 favorites. So Bronson Arroyo is a favorite when this game opened. This is the highest projected run total game. It is at 10. The Braves have the second highest projected run total at 4.94, and the Reds have the overall highest projected run total at 5.06. Talk to me about all the plays that are jumping off the page for you in this game.
You know what? I think the line, I think the Braves should be favored. I obviously don't like any of the pitching.
I do too.
I don't like any of the pitching. I want to target versus Faulty. Lefties. Great spot for Scott Schebler. Faulty gives up all the power to lefties. Schebler continues to hit the ball hard, especially at home. I mean, he's going to be one of my home run calls for the day. That usually curses him. But I have a lot of love for Schebler. Joey Votto is priced way up. So he's in a great spot, but he's not really making it for me. Other than that, I really don't have any interest in the hitters for the Reds. But for the Braves, they are priced super low on DraftKings. Matt Adams, the lineup's already out. Matt Adams is batting 5th as expected. Have interest in him. Interest in Ender Incarte, as I don't think has Bronson held runners well this year?
No, his fastball or his pitch is so slow that he's been, I mean, you can target speed, power, multiple hit upside, everything against Arroyo this year. He's just been, I mean, outside of Jared Weaver, he's been the worst pitcher in the league.
Yeah, so you have to love Ender then too. And then obviously, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you have to love everybody in this matchup against Bronson Arroyo. For me, it's cash games. Be prepared to face 3 to 4 hitters from the Braves side in about every cash game lineup. They're not expensive. You mentioned Matt Adams, who was hitting 5th. He's got the platoon advantage. He traditionally has crushed the opposite hand pitching. He's hitting 318, or has a 318 WOBA with a 215 ISO against right-handed pitching. He is super cheap on both sides. Bronson Arroyo has given up 10 home runs in 21.1 innings to left-handed bats. He's given up a hard hit rate of 37%, a fly ball rate of 52%, while only striking out 15%. That's an astronomical 4.22 home runs per 9 to left-handed hitters. So Inciarte, Nick Markakis, Matt Adams, you're going to see all of them in cash games. Adams most notably because he plays a first base and outfield eligibility on DraftKings. You'll see Matt Adams a lot. The right-handed bats, this is, I believe, the first time Brandon Phillips has gone back to Cincinnati.
That should be true.
It's either his first or second time, but either way, Brandon Phillips will be hitting second. He's very cheap on FanDuel. He's 2.6K. On DraftKings, he's 3.7K. And the numbers don't get any better for Arroyo against right-handed batters. He's allowed a fly ball rate of 45%, hard hit rate of 35.9%, and he's given up 8 home runs in 30.1 innings, which is 2.37 home run per 9 to right-handed bats. So it's even that number is just astronomical for a major league starting pitcher. So Brandon Phillips is firmly in play. You're going to see him all over the board in cash games. And then my number one overall play of the day is going to be Matt Kemp. Matt Kemp is going to be hitting. Is he hitting cleanup today? Markakis is third. Okay, yep. So he's hitting cleanup. It's in Cincy, which is a home run park, especially for right-handed bats. Kemp's got a 369 WOBA and a 230 ISO against right-handed pitching. I'm starting my cash game lineup with Matt Kemp penciled in.
Yeah, and I'm just looking up something quick. Okay. Just give me one.
Sure, I'll talk about about my Reds' interests. As I mentioned, this is the best game of the day to target for cash games. You're going to want to load up against Arroyo, but you're also going to want to load up those left-handed bats against Fulton Newitz. Joey Votto, if you can afford him, he's just an elite spot. He's got a 447 WOBA, a 263 ISO against right-handed pitching. Today, Fulte is allowing a 379 WOBA on a hard hit rate of 34% and a fly ball rate of 38%, while only striking out 16% of left-handed bats. So Joey Votto, if you can afford him at first base, you're going to have to choose between him and Matt Adams. Scott Schebler is an interesting play in cash games, and you might see some Schebler, but you're going to see a lot of Billy Hamilton just because Fulte's only striking out 16% left-handed bats. So if Hamilton can put the ball in play, this is a supreme stolen base spot. And he's only 3,600 on FanDuel.
Yeah, he's priced up at 5K on DraftKings. That kind of ruined my interest.
You won't see him on DraftKings.
But yeah, you're very true. It's a great stolen space spot. You got Tyler Flowers catching. And I don't believe Fulte's very great at holding on runners anyway, so he's probably won't strike out and has a decent chance of getting on base. And once he's on base, he should be running wild. What I was looking up was just Matt Kemp versus Brunson's pitch types. And, Brunson, he's relying obviously on some slow pitches this year, and that's kind of why I was interested. And it looks like Brunson versus righties is throwing about 35% of the time. He's throwing a 72-mile-an-hour curveball. And Matt Kemp versus right-hand bats in 2006 had a 330 ISO versus curveballs like that. Only 6 at bats though, so not a big sample size. But I did, just from memory, I did think that Matt Kemp absolutely crushes this slow breaking pitch stuff that Brunson offers. And just kind of looking over his 2016 and 2017. It looks to be pretty. The numbers follow my intuition anyway.
It's just, you're gonna in cash games, GPP. These guys are gonna be there's no hiding it. They're gonna be huge plays with high ownership. But I don't think you get queued. I think you just got to plug in these guys and find other places to differentiate. Specifically in cash, you don't get queued. Play these guys. It's the ballpark's great. The matchup is great. It's just a lock and load across the board.
Yeah, definitely. I just was looking more at Matt Kemp, and that is exactly what he hits the best: is sinkers, sliders, curveballs, and that is makes up almost 70% of what Brunson Arroyo throws to righties. So Matt Kemp in a great spot.
Yeah, and like I said, he's my core building block. He's got the highest home run upside for me today, and Billy Hamilton on the other side's got the highest stolen base upside of anybody in play today. So just as many as you can. Moving on, our next game, we have the Houston Astros and Dallas Keuchel traveling to Texas to take on the Rangers and Yu Darvish. This game is 2 aces. Houston is a -116 favorite. The run total is 7.5. And we have weather issues in this matchup. It's the only game that I've seen that has a potential weather issue. And that matters because it is Dallas Keuchel and Yu Darvish. Talk to me about what you see in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, from what I'm seeing, it sounds like it's about 50-50 to play. But if it does play, there is some interest in Dallas for me. He's been super elite versus left-hand bats, so the Rangers are likely going to get as many lefties out of their lineup as possible. The problem with that is they just don't have many good right-hand bats to replace them with, so it's going to be an ugly-looking lineup.
They're going to be in there. Who are they going to replace them with?
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. So you have Nomar and Odor, and then you probably see Ryan Rua and maybe Peter Kozmar or whatever might be in there, and
they signed Peter O'Brien, didn't they?
Yeah, but he's not in the. I don't think he's in the. He's got assigned to AAA. I would assume that'd be 3 easy strikeouts though.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying. That'd be a nice 4 easy strikeouts.
But yeah, I mean, so it's a great spot for Dallas, but from the way it sounds to me, it's 50-50 to play, and it might actually be worse than that. It's one of those things we'll have to be monitoring around lock. No interest in any of the hitters for me. Some slight interest in Dallas. Especially when we see that lineup, will be interesting to see what they actually throw out against them. But the weather concerns, I don't know if there's anything else we really need to talk about.
I've got, I just want to touch on Keuchel real quick. I've got him as my 4th-rated pitcher when the slate opened. And the more I dive into it, the less I am happy to have him that highly rated. But here are the raw numbers. He's the 7th biggest favorite of the slate. He's striking out 21.4% of batters. He's allowing a 139 WOBA to left-handed batters and a 252 WOBA to right-handed batters. He's 8-0 on the season with a 1.81 ERA. He's got 8 quality starts in his 10 starts. He's got the Rangers have the 3rd lowest projected team total of 3.65 runs, and the Rangers strike out 25.5% of the time to left-handed pitching. It's a good spot. His price on FanDuel is 10.3. On DraftKings is 10.9. It's a strong spot, but if there's any hint of weather, that's all I need to push me off of putting him in consideration, because there are 2 horses that we're going to talk about here in a bit that are relatively in the same price tier that you're going to want to play. And I'd much rather go down to a Michael Fulmer in cash and save the $2K and live with myself than risk someone in a weather spot. But he does pop up on models. He is a good play on paper. It'll be interesting. I want to see the lineup. I want to see the weather report. I'm not ruling him out, but he's not making his way into any of my cash game builds currently.
Yeah, and it's worth. I mean, it really is a really great matchup for him, because Dallas likes to work that inside and down pitches, and Texas loves to swing away at those types of pitches. So it is probably one of the better strikeout spots that Dallas has versus anyone in the league. But again, that weather is scary, and I think the postpone threat might even be higher once we get closer to game time.
Well, let's transition to this next game where the pitcher of the day that everyone's talking about, and deservedly so, we have the Los Angeles Dodgers, and it's the Clayton Kershaw day. And they're in Milwaukee to take on Jimmy Nelson and the Brewers. The Dodgers are minus 205 favorites, which is the largest on the slate. The run total is 7.5. It's a Kershaw day. How are you handling it?
I mean, it's tough to ever be negative about Kershaw, but I don't think I'll be on him at all today. He just hasn't been as dominant as we've seen from him in prior years, and he's still priced at that point. So he's too expensive for me. I mean, obviously this Brewers team can strike out a lot, but they are better versus left-hand pitching than right-hand pitching. There's a ton of upside for Kershaw here. He could obviously throw the 8-9 inning game and pick up 15 Ks versus Brewers team. But for me at 13K, I got other spots I'm interested in, and I have hitters I want to pay up for. So I'm not going to have any. I probably won't have any Kershaw today. But it's a scary place to fade for sure. I do have some interest in Jimmy Nelson as a cheap pitcher. He has been pitching very well lately. He's going to get a left-handed heavy Dodgers team that's been kind of struggling. And Jimmy actually has a 27% K rate versus lefties. He's striking out lefties at a 10% higher rate than right-hand pitching. So there is a lot of K.
He's better at home, right?
Yeah, and he's always been better at home, which it's tough to explain, but sometimes you just kind of have to say, well, it's the stats show it for 2-3 years, and there must be something there. And it's a great spot. I think it'd be interesting to see what lineup they put out. But if it's a lefty heavy lineup, should be a pretty dang good strikeout spot for Jimmy. And he's only 6.7K on DraftKings, makes a very interesting GPP play. I'm guessing he should be pretty low owned. He has been pitching pretty well lately, and some people maybe will be seeing that and kind of going to him. But you don't see people often target righties versus the Dodgers, so I'm guessing he'll be low owned, and I think he's got a lot of upside today. How about you?
I don't want to play any hitters from this game, obviously on either side. Clayton Kershaw, I hate Kershaw days when there's another ace or other good pitching spots because it's tough to make this decision. Obviously, he's the biggest favorite of the slate at 205. He's striking out 29.8% of hitters. The Brewers strike out 25.2% of the time to left-handed pitching. He's got 9 quality starts and 11 games started. He's got 2.10 ERA on the road. The Brewers have the lowest projected team total of 3.14 runs. I mean, it's Kershaw. He's 12-4 FanDuel, 13-1 DraftKings. If you fade Kershaw and he has his 8-inning, 9-inning game and he puts up a 60 on FanDuel and a 35 on DraftKings, you just lose. But if you don't play Kershaw and he blows up or doesn't return that big of a game, you're going to win. So in cash games, it makes it so difficult. His last outing against the Cubs, he lasted 4.1 innings. He gave up 11 hits. He walked 2 batters. He struck out 6, and he gave up 4 earned runs. I don't know. The Brewers, it seems like we always target the Brewers as pitchers, and they always seem to surprise us and get to the good pitchers and get held back by the bad pitchers. So I don't, at this point in the day, obviously Kershaw is tier 1 with Steven Strasburg, who we're going to talk about in just a moment. But you're going to run into heavy ownership of Kershaw in cash games. So fade at your own risk. That's your fade at your own risk guy of the day.
Yeah,
I'm not 100% all in on him right now, and I don't know if he'll make the roster. I mean, it's easy to fit him today. There's lots of bats and lots of value, and DraftKings made it specifically pretty easy. There are so many underpriced bats, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting spot, and I really don't have a clue what his ownership's going to be on DraftKings.
I mean, okay, listen to these strikeout totals. This is Clayton Kershaw: 6 against the Cubs, 10 against St. Louis, 5 against the Giants, 4 in Colorado against the Rockies, 9 against the Padres. I mean, that's not 12.4K or 13K worthy.
Yeah, and when you watch him pitch, it's shocking to watch. The biggest difference I'm seeing is when he gets 2-strike counts, he just is not being able to get that put-out pitch like he used to always have.
His slider's not getting people to swing and miss.
Yeah, and it ends up being long at bats with a lot of foul balls, and they usually end up eventually putting it in play. But at the same point of one of the teams that usually struggles with long at bats is the Brewers. So it is probably one of the better matchups he could have. It is in Milwaukee.
I wish it
Hitters Park.
Yeah, if it were in Los Angeles, it'd be a lot better of a spot.
It will also be interesting to see what lineup the Brewers put out, because you never quite know what a team does versus Kershaw. Sometimes they just completely punt and give everyone a day off. But I would imagine maybe they'll give Eric a day off and have the rest of the lineup be pretty normal, with Keon and Domingo batting up and towards the top, and Shaw will bat clean up. I mean, that's a good spot for Kershaw. But
well, I mean, final thought, it's Kershaw. Fade at your own risk. But we're going to be talking about Steven Strasburg in just a moment, so hold your reservations before going all in. Our next game, we have the Cleveland Indians and Josh Tomlin, who are at Kansas City to take on the Royals and Jason Vargas. The Royals are a -107 favorite and a 9-run total. Pretty interesting that the Royals are favored here. What are you seeing in this game?
Yeah, I don't understand that at all. I'd be all about betting the Indians today. Josh Tomlin is probably one of my least favorite pitchers. I've been pretty adamant that I thought he was one of the worst pitchers in the league, especially last year, but he's been pretty dang good lately. Enough that's scared me off playing hitters versus him. And there is maybe some interest in him versus this Royals team at a 7.4 price tag as an SP2. He still doesn't offer that K upside that you really want out of a pitcher you play in DFS. So, but he definitely is on the fringe of making my list of people to consider. I do love the Indians' bats here. Vargas has been starting to finally get hit hard. I can never explain. I mean, his changeup looked elite for a bit, but it just doesn't seem to look the same anymore. I think the Indians are going to hit him pretty hard today and put up a bunch of runs. My favorites are probably really have a lot of interest in Jason Kipnis. Vargas has actually been worse for his left-hand bats. Kipnis, even from the left-hand side, doesn't really struggle for hitting left-hand pitching at all. So I have a lot of interest in Kipnis, a lot of interest in Edwin Encarnacion, and also Francisco Lindor always makes a great shortstop play. How about you?
There's really only one play from this game that's sticking out in a lot of the cash game builds and that has a lot of buzz from what I picked up today. The Royals have a 4.55 run projection, that's really high for the Royals. But looking a little deeper into the numbers, for you people that believe in BVP, Salvador Perez is 18 for 35 with 1 home run against Tomlin. I mean, that's a pretty large sample size, and Perez, he's just at a price point that's kind of awkward for builds today, because why not just go up more if you're going to go all the way up and get a Gary Sanchez, or why not just punt and because you're going to pay it for pitching. So Salvador Perez, he's on the fringe radar, but Mike Moustakas is showing up a lot in a lot of builds.
Yeah, I do not like to target lefties versus Tomlin at all. He's always been very strong versus left-hand bats. So
Moustakas is he's 7 for 24 in his career against them with 2 home runs. He's only this season Tomlin's only striking out 14% of left-handed bats, and he's not walking anybody. He's got a 1.7% walk rate to left-handed bats. So I really like whenever I can get Moustakas in the spot where he's going to be challenged. And he's just, for me, he's showing up a lot in cash game builds. But because third base is pretty rough for cash games, there's just not a lot of people that are really sticking out. I mean, you can't afford Jake Lamb because he's too expensive. Evan Longoria is priced up in a matchup that's in Seattle. Miguel Sano's on some radars, but that's about it for the tier 1.
Yeah, and it's just
Mike Moustakas is showing up.
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, it hurts me to even say this, but Tomlin, I think he leads the slate in O-swing. He's at 36.7%. Last 3 days in O-swing, and then first pitch strikes, he's at 73%. He's under a 1% walk rate. His homer to fly ball rate's at 12. He's only giving up 29% hard contact. He's inducing 15% soft contact, which isn't a great number, but isn't terrible for him because he is more of a fly ball pitcher. I mean, I don't know. I really can't explain it. Tomlin's usually a guy I love to target with right hand power, but the way he's looked over his last 3 or 4 starts, especially in a spacious pitching park at Kansas City, I just have no interest in any hitters from the Royals today.
Yeah, as far as the Indian bat goes, they're just not making their way in any builds. There's nothing wrong with them. They're a fine play, especially Vargas has struggled more with left-handed bats, and they've got all those guys that platoon that you can swap over. So even if they go to the bullpen and you get the bad Royals bullpen, it's a great spot. So I I don't think there are any bad plays on the Indians. I'm just not. None of them are showing up in my builds or any of the buzz from the industry.
And it is worth mentioning. Probably one of the weirder stats in baseball for me is the Indians hitters home road splits. They've been terrible on the road for 2 years now. I don't know why. I mean, there was some allegations that they steal signs at home, and you don't really believe in that. But these numbers, their home road splits are so crazy that you kind of almost want to believe in it because you want to try to figure out some way to explain it. So it is something to mention that they have struggled on the road for 2 years now, and so it does bring back my interest somewhat.
Well, let's talk about the next game. This is the other ace, the other horse on the slate that people are going to want to play. We've got the Washington Nationals and Steven Strasburg traveling to Oakland to take on the Athletics and Andrew Triggs. Washington is only a 125 favorite. The run total is 7.5. What do you got here?
Yeah, I don't know how Washington is that small of a favorite even on the road.
They're giving Triggs a lot of respect.
Yeah, I don't have it myself. I see nothing in Triggs that makes me afraid of him at all. I like to target left-hand bats versus him. So Harper's obviously still suspended. So you got Daniel Murphy. Adam Lynn's been hitting the ball.
He'll be in the lineup too.
Yeah,
it's
DH part. And he's been hitting the ball about as hard as anyone in baseball. And he is super cheap. He's only 2.9K in DraftKings, and I'm guessing he's even cheaper on FanDuel. I don't have that in front of me offhand, but so I have big interest in Adam Lynn, probably my favorite play from the game. Matt Wieters at catcher, he'll be betting probably 7th, but he's only 3K in DraftKings. Nice price range. I like the matchup, but burying the lead a bit because you got Strasburg, who finally showed some strikeout upside that we've been worrying about because it had looked like he had been doing some strange pitch to contact stuff, and he's going to.
Yeah, he changed. Have you noticed he changed his approach? He's no longer pitching from the stretch.
Oh, really? I guess I hadn't noticed that.
They started him out in the season pitching from the stretch because they thought it would limit his just wear and tear on his body. They were trying to keep him more healthy, and he went away from that, and so he's been throwing his curveball a lot more, and he's just been. I don't want to say a different pitcher because he was still decent, but he's just been elite his last couple starts.
Yeah, I was going to say, he was definitely in his first starts of the year, he was a different pitcher than what he had been. You could just look at the underlying numbers and it just didn't seem like the strikeouts were there. But now, like you said, the last start or two, it's there, and he gets a A's team that strikes out as one of the top teams in the league versus right-hand pitching, and Strasburg for strikeouts has pretty neutral splits. He strikes out lefties and righties, so there's no worry about this lineup. I think it's a great.
Oh, he kills lefties if he gets lefties today because they're going to have a lot of lefties. The only guy he has to worry about is Chris Davis. If he can get around Chris Davis, and even in this park, it's less of a home run threat.
Yeah, that's big for him.
I love Strasburg.
Yeah, I do too. He's my number one pitcher. I have lefties at a 27.9 and righties at a 26.7, so I have it pretty neutral for me for strikeouts, but both of them, both very high K rates, and this team from both sides, every hitter from both sides of the plate swings pretty freely, except for maybe, Yonder Alonso off the top of my head, so the only one in the lineup that isn't a huge K target.
Yeah, here's the thought on cash games. You either play Kershaw or you play Strasburg as your SP1 on FanDuel. Those are the guys. You're going to run into those guys at 50% ownership, 35% ownership. On DraftKings, you can play with both of them, and you can have a pretty respectable hitting lineup because they've got so many guys priced down today. So that is it's going to be a popular build. But I've been working on as the SP1 and then paying down for SP2 on DraftKings. You can get a very, very strong hitting lineup to go with a very safe pitching. And on FanDuel, you're saving over $1,000 and you can upgrade to a very big bat from someone who is just a hope he gets a hit bat. The only guy that worries me, as I mentioned, is Chris Davis, who's 4 for 6 in his career against Strasburg, and he's got 2 home runs. So you got to assume that Steven and the pitching staff have figured out Okay, whatever we would throw at him, let's not throw those, which is probably fastballs. But everyone else on this lineup for the A's doesn't scare me. It's a good park for pitching. Strasburg is the 5th biggest favorite of the slate. The A's have the 2nd lowest projected team total at 3.60 runs. There's nothing about anything in this matchup that gives me the red flag. I'm all aboard the Steven Strasburg train today.
Yeah, and I really don't think it's a hot take at all to say that I have Steven Strasburg projected to score much more points than Clayton Kershaw. I mean, even at the reduced price not considered, I'd play Strasburg over Kershaw today.
And that's the dilemma in cash games. I mean, that's it. You're going to pick between Strasburg and Kershaw on FanDuel, and probably one of them on DraftKings. So, I mean, that's it. You got to decide. I want to see the Oakland lineup. I want to see the Brewers lineup. And it's going to be splitting hairs on does the improvement with $1,000 get me a bat that I really feel safe with, or do I just pay up for Kershaw? Moving on, our next game, we have the Minnesota Twins and Kyle Gibson, who are in Los Angeles to take on the Angels of Anaheim and JC Ramirez. The Angels are huge favorites here at minus 140. The run total is 8.5. How are you attacking this one?
Yeah, I don't have a ton of interest in anything here. I'm going to respect the Angels Stadium, and I think the Angels might be somewhat popular, but Gibson's has looked, if you watch his starts, he's looked better than what people assume. He's been able to limit damage. He's been able to hit the corners and get his breaking pitches to work, especially with guys on base, which maybe is just lucky. But for me, I'm just staying away from any Angels hitters. JC Ramirez, I don't have any interest in pitching him. His strikeout upside has just completely fallen off. And this Twins team is a patient team that should give him some trouble. I think he still has an okay game, but he's not going to get enough strikeouts to make it worth it for DFS. But at the same point, I just have no interest in any hitters. How about you?
Everything I used to base my research on is pointing me towards these Angels left-handed bats. They've got the Vegas total, they've got the matchup, and they've got the price points for cash games that it's just an elite spot for these Angels bats. Luis Valbuena at third base is only 2,700 on FanDuel, and he's only 3K on DraftKings. And as I mentioned, there's no third baseman that I really am wanting to pay up for. He fits so many builds, and he's been good when he's in the lineup. He's got a 338 WOBA and a 193 ISO against right-handed pitching. On the season, Gibson's allowing 419 WOBA with 4 home runs and 18.2 innings. He's given up a hard hit rate of 40%, a fly ball rate of 37%, and he's only striking out 12.5% of left-handed bats. I've got lots of interest in Luis Valbuena, and then the other guy you're going to see all over the place in cash games. This is your fade at your own risk punt play. Cole Calhoun, who should be hitting leadoff or second today, is coming off a 2-home run game. So everybody that watched last night saw Cole Calhoun hit 2 home runs. He's got a 309 WOBA and a 155 ISO against right-handed pitching. He is just stupid priced on DraftKings. He is 2.6K on DraftKings. If you get a 2-hole hitter or even a leadoff hitter at 2.6K for a team that's favored, a team that's projected to score 4.48 runs, you're going to be facing Cole Calhoun in all your cash games from sharp players.
Yeah, it is worth mentioning. Luis absolutely crushes Gibson's pitch mix. So
that's I like to hear that because I'll tell you right now, Luis Valbuena has made every single build and variation of cash game build I've made today. Valbuena's been in it.
Yeah, a fun fact. Cole Calhoun's been in the league, for 5-6 years. And I just recently, like last week when I was typing up my article, realized that you don't spell his name Cohl, it's Cole, and I was just looking up his pitch thing, and I was still spelling it Cohl, so I was like, it was like no results, and I was super confused, but I'm just looking up his, and he is actually not that great versus Gibson's pitch mix. He's about his average output, maybe a little below average, but so nothing to really consider there. But Luis was well above average from his normal output versus the pitch mix I expect Gibson to throw to lefties today.
Our next matchup, we have the Tampa Bay Rays and Jake Odorizzi going to Seattle and taking on the Mariners and Christian Bergman. Seattle and Bergman are minus 103 favorites. Run total is 8.5. Anything from this game? Excuse me.
Yeah, again, it's pretty much a pass game for me. I don't mind the lefties from the Rays, but in this stadium at their super high price points, they're not fitting any of my lineups. I will mention one thing. Souza is hitting the ball as top 5 in the league the last 15.
They jacked up his price.
Yeah, and he's 5.1K. He does hit righties better, but still the prices are way out there.
FanDuel 3.9. He's unplayable today.
Yeah,
even though he's in a good
I do
spot.
like. I do like him, and he's unplayable for cash. I would agree, but I do like him for GPPs.
Yeah.
Bregman doesn't strike out righties at all, and he's actually been worse versus righties. Souza has always had better power versus right hand pitching, so it's a great spot for him. His price is way up. He should be super low owned, so he is definitely a very interesting GPP play. Other than that, I don't have a ton of interest of anyone here. I respect Jake enough in a pitcher's park to not really pay up for these Mariners bats here. What are you thinking?
There is a passover game. There's no one in this game for cash game purposes. Not a pitcher, not a hitter. There's just no one.
Sounds good.
Side note, Nelson Cruz got hurt yesterday, and Gene Segura got hurt yesterday. If they don't make the lineup, I don't know who fills in for them. There may be some value spots opening up in good hitting, batting.
Yeah, I was thinking the other side. It might be a decent lineup to throw Jake in. Jake might jump into consideration if they throw in a really sketchy lineup without.
If they don't have Segura and they don't have Nelson Cruz,
it could be a spot for him.
But that's it. Just be on the lookout for that. Our final game of the night, we have the Colorado Rockies and German Marquez. I believe that's how you pronounce his first name.
German, whatever. Yeah. Marquez.
But Marquez and the Rockies are at the San Diego Padres taking on Clayton Richard. The Rockies are minus 110 favorites. The run total is 7.5. I'll make it simple for this game. No one makes any cash game sense based on price points and ballpark and matchup. Anything from GPP?
Yeah, I do have some interest in Clayton Richard on DraftKings as an SP2. He's only 5.2K. Shouldn't be that low. So he definitely, if you want to do a Strasburg, Clayton Richard and pay up for hitting, he doesn't offer you the huge K upside, but it's not an awful matchup for him. And I could see him, getting you that 15 to 18 DraftKings points that you want out of a 5K pitcher. Other than that, 7.2K on Marquez. I do have some. He's on the fringe, I guess, of SP2s for me on DraftKings. You do like targeting righties versus Padres lineup, but he has been worse versus righties. He strikes out lefties at a higher clip, so that's probably enough to get me off. But there is some Clayton Richard interest. The hitters, for me, I really don't want to play any hitters in this game, so that should do it for me.
Well, that sums up the slate, wraps up the slate. Sum up the slate, again, in cash games, Strasburg or Kershaw, as many bats as you can from the Atlanta at Cincinnati game, sprinkle in your one-offs, and that's pretty much it. What about your sum up for GPP?
Yeah, I would say Strasburg by far my favorite pitcher on the slate. For low-owned GPP options for pitching, I do have a lot of interest in Jimmy Nelson. I'm going to be very interested in what that lineup turns out as. For stacks, I do like the Orioles. They should be a very low-owned stack, I hope anyway. Other than that, we talked about we both like the Braves a lot, and especially we talked about Matt Kemp matches up really well versus him. And I'm trying to find one other stack off the top of my head that I like. And, for me, other than the Orioles, it's really not a stack day for me. It's going to be a day where I'm going to run just my favorite hitters at each position. How about you?
I like the Atlanta side. I like the Cincinnati lefties. I like the Detroit righties if I can afford them. The Giants lefties are good for price point, and the Angels lefties are really good for price point. Let's jump into our player draft. You've got first pick today. I like the idea of we got to have one low price player.
Works.
But off of your first pick, who do you got?
Works for me. And just to say, you won again last night, led by Nick Ahmad was the pick of the day. So you're up 3-0 at me. So I gotta try to find a weak saver here to at least get on the board. And my first pick is going to be JD Martinez.
It's a good one. Martinez against Derek Holland in Detroit. My first pick, I told you during the show, he's my favorite play of the day. I'm building every lineup with him. I will have 100% of Matt Kemp tonight. It doesn't get any safer, in my opinion, for cash games with upside at Cincinnati against Bronson Arroyo. My second pick, I'm going to get my other high-priced guy out of the way. I seemed like I was much higher on him than you were initially during our discussion, but I love Giancarlo Stanton today against in Miami against Patrick Corbin. Anytime Stanton's versus a lefty, he's my guy.
Yeah, and I already had written down Stanton for you. I'm going to grab my boy, the guy I probably play maybe too much, but he's served me well for the most part, except when I make my home run call. But I'm taking Scott Schebler. And then for my low price,
it's a good spot.
For my low price guy, I don't know. Does Manny Machado count as a low price guy? He's 3,100 in DraftKings.
I'll give you Machado. Right. He's off the board.
Give me Manny Machado.
My last guy, I mentioned he's made every build I've put together so far, but I love Luis Valbuena tonight. He should be hitting cleanup at home against Kyle Gibson with the platoon split. I like Valbuena a lot. That sums up our long 14-game slate. Everyone that's stuck with us this whole time, we appreciate it. As always, be on the lookout for a place to be. Bluff's article coming out in the next couple hours. Tom's take will also be out in a couple hours with updates from all the lineups. Should be a fun and exciting slate. A good day for baseball.
Yeah, it's definitely a very interesting slate. There's some huge GPP tournaments out there on both FanDuel and DraftKings, and hopefully we at least mention the nuts today, and we get start a big hot streak here and get some big screenshots tonight.
As always, RotoRadar, appreciate you. Good night, good skill.
Did you like today's show? Did you find this information to be helpful? Give us a shout out on any social media platform. Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Of course, don't forget to use the hashtag RotoRadarMLB in your post. Every time you use that hashtag, you'll get a ticket to our $20,000 raffle in July. You heard that right. $20,000. We appreciate every single one of you for being RotoRadar members. On the RotoRadar will be available for members only Monday to Friday for the remainder of the MLB season. As always, good night and good skill. For more information on our raffles, head over to our website, www.rotoradar.net.